Dr. Liz Rutledge, Director of Wildlife Resources at the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. Thank you all for attending tonight's webinar, which is part of the 15 webinar series, Learn to Deer Hunt. This series offers a dynamic lineup of presentations and materials curated by the New Hill Hunter Education and Mentoring Program, covering a wide variety of top deer hunters from preseason scouting to deer processing. The series is hosted and moderated by the North Carolina Wildlife Federation in conjunction with its South Wake Conservationist chapter. And some general housekeeping real quick. We ask that everyone stay muted throughout the webinar until we have the question and answer session at the end. Also, this webinar is being recorded for future use, so please turn your camera off if you do not want to be seen in the video recording. We ask that you either put any questions you have in the chat box during the presentation, which will be read during the Q&A session, or you may raise your hand to be called on during the Q&A session. To raise your hand, use the hand sign in the top right corner of your screen. And all right, so I'll take a couple minutes to give you some background information on North Carolina Wildlife Federation programming related to R3, which is retention, recruitment, and reactivation. So first of all, the Wildlife Federation has partnered with NC State, the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, Wake County Wildlife Club, and other conservation groups to build upon current R3 programming and introduce college students from non-traditional backgrounds to hunting and shooting sports. We also work with Getting Started Outdoors, which is a partnership between the Wildlife Federation and the Wildlife Resources Commission to provide an all-day educational workshop and one-on-one deer hunting mentoring opportunities for participants. For those interested in wildlife and conservation policy issues, the Federation has the CAMO Coalition, which is a listserv to keep members up to date on policy, specifically geared toward hunters and anglers. Artemis is a program of the National Wildlife Federation that the North Carolina Wildlife Federation promotes to uplift women in sporting and conservation, to provide small group hunting and mentoring opportunities for females. The Wildlife Federation is proud to host this webinar series in conjunction with the New Hill Education and Mentoring Program and additional partners who are contributing the educational content for the webinars that we're able to bring to you. So in addition, North Carolina Wildlife Federation volunteers partner with the Commission to provide skill-based seminars consisting of Deer Hunting 101 and From Field to Freezer Deer Processing. These are open to the public and they typically occur in September. The Wildlife Federation also works directly with North Carolina Hunters for the Hungry to facilitate the donation of hunter-harvested deer to feed the hungry across the state. All right, so this seminar series was curated by the New Hill Education and Mentoring Program and facilitating partners, which are listed on this slide. The webinars are for adults new to deer hunting and includes practical topics to explore the ins and outs of hunting and enhance your overall outdoor experience. Please see the New Hill Education and Mentoring Program Facebook page for more information on field opportunities. And I'm happy to introduce our guest speakers, Evan and Andy from Opportunity Outdoors. And Andy may join us a little bit later, but we've definitely got Evan here this evening. So I'll provide a little bit of background on Evan and then I'll let him introduce the webinar topic for this evening. Since he was just learning to walk, Evan was exposed to the great outdoors. Hailing from rural upstate New York, his family has always taken advantage of the opportunity to harvest game from the land. That upbringing left Evan wanting to share the wonders of wildlands with more and more curious people. From indoctrinating first-time deer hunters to teaching himself to archery hunt for bull elk in the Rocky Mountains, Evan lives to push boundaries in the outdoors. And so right now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Evan.
Hello. Yeah, I think that's always just like Andy did that right up for us on the website. I'm like, oh wow, that sounds so fancy. But no, I mean, I'm just an avid hunter. I've always grown up doing it, and bow hunting is very special to me. It's been kind of probably where I found my love for hunting, and for the most part, it's kind of what my father grew up teaching me. So he was able to kind of get me out in the woods more safely during bow season. So I always wanted to be a bow hunter. ever since seeing him go out. And I did start my first season as a gun hunter, but I quickly transitioned to a bow hunter as my favorite way to do my outdoor activities, and that's just all I've always ever just consumed me. A little bit more about Opportunity Outdoors is an organization that Andy and I founded about exactly 1 year ago from a concept of helping with some of the GSO programs that North Carolina Wildlife Federation, the WRC, and put together. And Andy and I were mentors, and we realized that, there's a little bit more assistance that maybe or guidance and what we call mentorship that was needed beyond the introduction of hunting. And it's a tall task to look at it from a mentor perspective at times, because mentorship can be kind of phrased as like hand-holding, or you think about a child being mentored by his father, like me, where he's taking him out every single time, having him sit. And we wanted to kind of change that, and we wanted to kind of provide support for new hunters that wanted to continue to hunt, because there's a lot of unanswered questions and a lot of trials and tribulations you go through as a hunter as you grow, to build the confidence so people can continue to go out on their own and really focus on that retention side. So that's why we created Opportunity Outdoors, and that's why we always say we're growing conservation through mentorship, because hunting has a strong history of conservation in this country, and the way to grow conservation, honestly, is to find more people who care about it. And I'd be hard pressed to get across the table from somebody and say that some of the strongest conservationists are hunters. So that's what we wanted to do is just grow that. So what we are is we're a community. That's really what we wanted from the beginning, was a community feel. Everybody who's in the community is a part of it, owns it, whether you're new or you're old, you want to grow in one area or another. There really are no limits or caps to it. I have people who mentor me, and I'm always looking to mentor others. So that's really what we want. And it's accessible. It's inclusive to everybody. Just because you didn't grow up in an outdoor family or don't have any experience being in the outdoors doesn't mean you can't join this group. There are no, it's always cliche saying there's no dumb questions, but there really isn't here. It's very open. And I think a lot of people can attest to the fact that that's how we operate, and that's what we push for. Is anybody, come on out. Doesn't matter your experience, doesn't matter what you know, what you don't know, what questions you have. We'll welcome you with open arms, and that's just what we expect out of the community, and that's what we want. Why? Beyond hunter ed and new hunter programs, we just see that there's still a lack of confidence, and there's a seeking desire for support from experienced hunters or outdoorsmen. And there's sometimes an unaware, people aren't aware of possible different organizations like, North Carolina Wildlife Federation, or even things that the WRC does, or whatever agency is in your state, or the National Deer Association, formerly QDMA, and the National Wild Turkey Federation. Some folks who get into this don't even realize all the opportunities that are within their hands, within an arm's reach. So we want to make sure that they're aware of those places and hopefully become members and grow conservation. And then hunter educators and mentors. We want to create more. We want to create more people who are willing to take people out and show them how easy it can be, how deserving, how they deserve the support, and redefining what it means to be a mentor, and show them that we're here to help them also on the mentor side. So that's why we created it, and I think it's gone well so far. How we do it, we do it in multiple ways, but we provide support on how to be more efficient coach in the field. We kind of give a little bit of a guideline on how you can be more efficient at doing this, so that way you're not taking too much time out of your hunting schedule, but you're also creating more friends. We like to highlight the efforts put forth by mentors to show the appreciation for those acts, and just to show that it matters and it makes an impact on people, whether they're the mentor getting impacted or the mentee getting impacted. We like to create opportunities to meet, for more mentees to meet other mentors through community events, through shooting, practice, through just even going to other conservation organizations, pint nights like backcountry hunters and anglers, so people can organically meet other people who are interested in taking them out in their area. We really do encourage a pay it forward, and for those who have previously been mentored and were mentees. And I think that organically happens no matter what. You know, if you get taught something, you feel the need to want to teach it to somebody else, and we really appreciate those who really do that, because it just creates a snowball effect, and that's all we really wanted to do with this organization. And then we really want to connect other mentors with each other. You know, there's a strong bond between Andy and I, because we found that we really wanted to connect with other people that are like-minded like us, who want to help other people. And you know, it's one of the reasons why I joined New Hill, was it was like my own little group of people that are also mentors and see so much value in it. And you know, it's been really awesome to see that part of the community as well. But that's enough about Opportunity Outdoors. I can give you some more information at the end on how to find us, but I'll get right into it. Archery hunting. So as I said, archery hunting is probably my favorite, and it's probably for these reasons. And I like to do things maybe the hard way, but I think I get way more out of it, and I think most of us do. And you know, it really magnifies the importance of practice, patience, and woodsmanship. I think woodsmanship is one of my favorite things when it comes to hunting, is understanding why animals are doing what they're doing, what it means in the woods when you don't see anything, by just looking at the ground, or looking the way that other animals are behaving, or the weather, or the way the hardwood look compared to the edge of maybe some growing up pines, and really trying to decipher a puzzle that is woodsmanship in many ways. And it consumes me. Most people who bow hunt really love it because of how connected they feel, and they, not knocking on rifle hunting or anything like that, because there's some way darn better rifle hunters than I'll ever be a bow hunter, and I can learn a lot from them. But it's just something about this time of the year, with less people in it and more of a calm scenario, is why I enjoy doing it, and that's why I kind of picked up hunting archery for different animals outside of white-tailed deer. I really believe that experiencing the woods through a bow hunter is something that's unique. It's just like being a turkey hunter. It's a completely different kind of woods. The animals, they act slightly different during this time of the year, whether it's from pressure or from, you know, just the time of the year, if they're rutting or if they're not, or they're in pre-rut. The way that the woods is just slightly different before all the leaves are gone. It's just one of its rawest forms, in my opinion, less pressure. With people walking around with guns, it feels a little bit quieter. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I just have a bias towards it. But I really do think you see more animals and you experience more things, because you have to be so close and so patient, that you really get to see the woods in a completely different light. Agenda for archery will be just, I'm going to go over basic equipment, the practice aspect of it, the different styles of how I scout compared to maybe a gun season, and styles of archery hunting. So whether you're in a tree stand or you're on the ground, you know, most people kind of pigeonhole bow hunters to being in a tree, and I do 90% of the time, but you can have success on the ground as well. So I don't want anybody to think that you can't. And then also where to learn more about bow hunting. Archery equipment. So obviously that's what archery season is all about. So what is archery equipment? It can be defined pretty simply, because there are so many different styles of archery equipment that, you know, it's a solid stationary handle, so something you hold on to, with two limbs that usually flex to create that non-pneumatic means of propelling a single arrow or a bolt, and bolt usually is for crossbows. And then obviously it may be used to be taking game and non-game species, and non-game just basically means something that doesn't have a season, like wild hog or something. And those are just a couple pictures of me shooting a bow, and then picture of when we took Cheryl shooting for the first time, and she was hitting her 3D targets, so with the arrows in them. So just some real basic stuff that most people see when you see it. Going a little more in depth into some archery equipment, the most common form of archery equipment probably is the compound bow. It's the technological advancement that we have when it comes to bows, you know, and here is a picture with all the little pieces. It's definitely more complex than what you think about in traditional archery, which I'll get into in a minute. But just a couple quick things that I'll say is you typically have cables. You always have cables on compound bows. You have a string where the arrow connects. You have a knocking loop. You have the cable guard, or sometimes a cable stop, or, you know, a cable guard keeps everything in track, and then you sometimes have a string stop, which isn't on here, that dampens noise. You can get double cams, so that bottom left cam is what they call a cam, and it creates that let off, and then there's an idler cam, which keeps everything on track, but some people have double cams. I could go all day about the ins and outs of archery compound bows and the differences and what they bring, but to be honest with you, it's something that is important if you're really interested in it, but it's not necessary in order to get a bow and go hunting. You can find a bow in any style that works for you. It's just there's a lot of in the weed stuff when it comes to compound bows, which can make it complicated, but at the same time, it can better fit maybe your needs and tailor to you. There's an arrow rest where the arrow rests. There's typically a bow sight with compound bows. My father, actually, I grew up with my father. He never used sights, and he never used a release, which goes on to that knocking loop, which people use like a little bit of a trigger. So my father grew up with a compound bow and shot it like a traditional bow, which is no sights and just his fingers. It's pretty hard to do that, but that's just kind of how he grew up. You have a stabilizer to keep everything balanced when you're shooting. The limbs connect through those bolts, and then you have a quiver typically to hold your arrows. And I guess that's about as far as I'll get into it right now. And I'll just add in the peep sight is what you look through that to look through your bow sight. So you line everything up, and then you release through that. Release the string through your release typically on a compound bow. And then I'm always open to questions about compound bows after this, but you know, typically the let off on a bow is something like 65 or 75%. Some can go up to 80%. And basically what that means is when you start pulling it, it's at the most heaviest poundage, and those poundages are usually measured in like 40, 50, 60, and you can change them a little bit. And bow shops will check them for you, or if you have your own scale, you just have to do it safely. One thing though is you never dry fire bows. You will break the limbs without it pushing something. It takes all the energy and it puts it into the limbs, and you'll crack the limbs and you'll damage your bow, and it'll be a very expensive fix. So please never dry fire a bow, whether you're at a bow shop or you are messing with your buddy's bow or you have your own bow. Just never, ever, ever do it. It's rare that they don't break when that happens, and then it becomes unsafe. So, but yeah, that's the compound bow, and the main advantage is that it does let off on weight, and that's why people can hold it for so much longer than maybe a traditional bow. Traditional bows, the most typical ones are the longbow and the recurve. The longbow is at the top and the recurve is at the bottom. There are slight differences in performance. Typically, from when I don't shoot either one of these, I'd like to get into it. It's a more simpler form of hunting with a bow. It's cheaper, but at the same time, it can be a little more difficult when it comes to shooting at distance, to be accurate and to have enough momentum behind the arrow to make an ethical shot. You need a more heavier arrow, so it doesn't go as far and as flat, but people have great success with this, and these are probably the earliest forms of bows that were out there was longbow, and then the recurve. The recurve gives you a little more velocity than maybe a longbow and longer distance shots. The traditional bows are really great for young kids and those who really want to continue a traditional style of hunting. They're simpler when it comes to drawing them back. As you draw back, the weight gets heavier. There is no let off, and you just have to make sure you have a bow that matches you for the most part, and then a string that matches the bow for the knock point and everything, so when you pull back it's level to where you need it to be. Again, it's just much simpler. There's the upper limbs, the lower limbs, there's where you hold it, there's small silencers, and then there's a knocking point where you just put the bow arrow above or below, whatever works for you, and you can change that knocking point. and it's the string, and that's basically about it. And as you can tell from the pictures, the bottom one has that curve, and the longbow does not. And that was what kind of changes the way that the bow shoots. And you can unstring these pretty easily. I still don't recommend dry firing any bow, so I wouldn't recommend dry firing these either. But that is your traditional bow. It's a great, cheaper option to get into bow hunting and just have fun. And that's one of the reasons why I want to get into it, is to just hone skills. And I know a couple people who hunt with them and do have success. So that's the traditional bow. And then another form that's becoming more popular now and legal in a lot of states is the crossbow. The crossbow is obviously a much more modern style of hunting archery equipment, and it has a lot of complexity like a compound bow. You still need to practice with it, but it is a bit more accurate. They can shoot farther. They have more velocity and impact. You can put sights on it like a gun, and it has a trigger like a gun. And they use bolts instead of arrows, and that's just the terminology for the most part. They still have cams and wheels, and you still have to draw them back through a means of pulling the string back into its locking position, and when you release the trigger, it shoots everything. And they do have cables as well, and maintenance is just as important. One thing that people need to be aware of and be careful about is where your forearm grip is, to never put your thumb or on the other part of your hand around the top of a bow or a crossbow, because you can lose a finger very easily, because that bowstring is going super fast and it will cut your finger right off. And that's not me trying to scare you. That's just me trying to make sure everybody stays safe when they're shooting a crossbow, and to keep that in mind and always be very super vigilant of that, and the safety, where the safety is at all times, because you basically have a loaded gun when you have one of these. And you hold it a lot just like a gun, and like a shotgun or a rifle, and you can hold it up and shoot. Obviously, you still have the limits of being able to make ethical shots in a clear opening. You can't shoot through brush with these, so don't try to, but it is another form of getting out archery hunting, and I fully support every form of archery hunting. I prefer my compound bow, but I have hunted with a crossbow before, so absolutely, if this is something that you're interested in. Arrows. So people usually typically think about arrows as like, oh, I'm just going to go to the store and buy the cheapest arrow, or I'm going to buy just this arrow, looks good. There's a lot of differences when it comes to arrows, especially per bow setup or crossbow setup, and you can get them in carbon fiber, which is probably the most typical version and the most modern version. You can get them in aluminum, which is probably like my dad's era. He always hunted with aluminum arrows. And then you can get a hybrid version where they can put like carbon fiber inside of aluminum, and there's all kinds of different like weights and sizes and all this stuff, and that does actually come into play when you're thinking about what you're going after. The heavier the arrow, the more momentum it has and the more penetration. The lighter the arrow, the faster the arrow and quicker to the point, and they can shoot farther. So it's all a balance on what you're hunting and what your bow is capable of hunting. And then there's also, wood, which can be made out of hardwoods or not. And a lot of traditional guys like to continue with traditional wood arrows, but the problem is that they can break and splinter, but they're also extremely effective, and they're pretty cool if you ask me. In that bottom or in that top picture, you see the arrow tip, and typically they have a screw-on tip. You can use practice field tips is what that's shown, and the bottom left is your broadheads, which you use for hunting. There's the main shaft. There's the fletchings, which correct your arrow through travel, because what an arrow does is it flexes back and forth. And if you watch any slow-mo videos of arrows flying, they actually flex from the middle out, and they kind of wave almost like you would wave like a piece of sheet metal. And it's really, really cool to watch in slow motion, because you think an arrow is just going straight. But the stiffer the arrow, the less flex it has. And that plays into a lot that bottom right picture, which I'll get into. But the knock is where you connect it to the string, and it's just almost like a quick release, like nock. It goes thinner and then it goes bigger to fit your string, and then it stays on there and make sure your arrow doesn't fall off every time. The bottom right picture is just a quick spine chart, and basically I would zoom in real quick, but I think I can. Let me see here. So if you're looking at it here, it shows recurve on the left side, it shows compound, and it shows your arrow length. So your arrow length is directly related to your draw length, which I'll get into in a minute, and that's specific to everybody. However long your wingspan is, there's a calculation that you do to get your arrow length, and a couple people do different ways, and that could be your wingspan divided by 2 plus a couple inches, or there's a couple of different equations, and I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of it quite yet. It's something that you should do at a bow shop or when you're doing your own research to understand what arrow length you should get and what you should get them cut to. Typically when you buy arrows, they're full length and you cut them to your length. But what's important here is your bow weight, which is shown right here. And what that does is it shows you where you are in terms of how strong you are at pulling your bow back. And what that correlates to is the arrow spine. And the arrow spine is all those numbers and the colors. So if you're someone like me and you pull back, 65 to 70 pound compound bow, which would fall in that compound bow section, you go to your 65-70. I shoot about a 26-inch arrow, so you're going to go over, and I have a 350 grain or a 350 spine arrow. And what that means is it's correlating the poundage of your bow and how hard it is pushing an arrow to get the correct amount of flex so your arrow flies straight. If you get that number wrong and you're shooting a batch of different arrows with different spines, then you're going to have different results when it comes to your end target. So it's very important when you're selecting your arrows for your bow that you have the correct spine to have the most accurate results. And that's why most people suggest getting at least half a dozen arrows in that spine, because you will break arrows. And it is an investment, but you can get consistent patterns out of those arrows doing so. But yeah, you can go into the recurve stuff, and each manufacturer has this spine stuff, and if you go to a bow shop or anybody who sells arrows, they'll be able to help you out and make sure you select the right arrow for your setup. Broadheads, down to the bottom left, there's a couple different versions, and it's an always debatable thing. You have your expandable blades, which shoot and fly a little bit more like a field tip that you practice with, so people tend to like those better, and they do a great job when hitting game. But some people have had issues in the past, or they just don't feel comfortable with them because it's another mechanical thing that can go wrong, is what most people debate. I've had mixed reviews on them personally myself. I've had great results, and I've had maybe one mishap with them, which switched me to more of a removable blade, which my father grew up hunting, which is something that has a centerpiece that holds your cutting blades almost like a razor blade, but it's what they would call more of a fixed version where there is no expansion out of it. And then the real true fixed versions are just solid pieces of metal that have the correct cutting on it. And you can go everything from 4-blade to 3-blade to 2-blade. Again, broadheads, there's so many of them out there on the market. Typically, I go with something like that's more sound, or I know it's proven through a lot of reviews, but there's new stuff coming out every year. So I always suggest, getting advice from people, see what they've used, do reviews and select your broadheads off of that. So that's just my little 2 cents on arrows. People think it's all in the bow, but a lot of it has to do with the arrow too. You can get a pretty, baseline bow that shoots straight, and you might spend more money on arrows over your career bow hunting, because arrows and field tips and all that, and broadheads is kind of really just as important. Properly selecting equipment for you is what I want to get into, and that is, like I said, the draw length, the draw weight, and the arrow spine, which I just touched on. So draw length is correctly or directly correlated to your wingspan, and draw weight is whatever you're capable of doing safely. One of the biggest, I think, mistakes that bow hunters do is think that they need to pull back the heaviest weight possible that they can like muster up, and that's not true. What you need to do is be able to draw back a bow by sitting on your butt and on your back, and be able to slowly pull back your bow to full draw, and not be reaming and squirming around trying to, pull off that weight. You're gonna eventually either injure yourself, or it's just not good practice, and you're gonna have bad technique. And then arrow spine, obviously, I just touched on. If you have the improper draw length, though, you might be just as inaccurate because your arrow is not sitting in the right spot, or you're torquing your bow. And again, that's something that someone who has a lot of experience, or a bow shop or somewhere, can help make sure that you have the correct draw length. And you can go anywhere from a Bass Pro Shop to a professional bow outfitter. Budget. So, I mean, budget, there's cost versus compound and traditional. Traditional tends to be cheaper, but, there's some really nice and expensive traditional bows out there. So the quality of arrows are also something that you'd want to consider. Now, when you talk about those hybrid aluminum coating, carbon fiber, and all that stuff, it starts to get really expensive. But if you get a sound baseline arrow, it's not as bad. The beauty of arrows is they're not like bullets for the most part. Usually you can just shoot them over and over and over and over again until they crack or break, and so you can get a couple seasons out of them, which is nice. And then obviously broadheads, you can go really expensive to your classic muddies, smuzzies. So again, it's all within what you can afford and what works for you. I'm somebody who will go out and find used bows that fit me, that are half MSRP and were great bows. Like my bows from like 2010, 2011, got it on a great deal from a guy who was selling a second hand, and that's what I went with. But if you're not comfortable with that and you want to go get a brand new bow, by all means, I want a brand new bow. So please, consider all your options. The most important thing is, like I said, is making sure that everything fits you and everything's sound and you have the correct setup for you. And then application really is like, what are you after? Are you after whitetail? Are you after big elk? Are you after, some people go small game hunting for squirrels or rabbits with them? And also understanding your regulations. There's a minimum draw weight for most states when it comes to a bow. You can't go out there with 15 pounds and be hurting animals or just being an unethical hunter, so just make sure you understand your regulations, whether you can use a crossbow or not, so just understand that stuff and what you're going after, and make sure your setup is legal and safe and ethical. So practice. I can't emphasize it enough when it comes to bow hunting. In order to get a nice group like Gustavo has there in the top right, you really need to practice a lot. And me and him practiced probably every day all summer after work, 2 to 3 times a week, just honing in his skills as he learned to become a bow hunter. And, as my father told me when I picked up a bow, he said, you're not allowed to hunt until you can hit a pie plate at about 20 yards consistently. And that was probably generous. I'm usually more of a baseball kind of guy. If I can't hit a baseball size target or smaller consistently, then I'm not taking a shot at that distance. I just don't feel confident. When you get in the heat of a moment of having an animal, it's really, everything kind of goes out the window. And that's why practice is so important, because you're just doing what your habits are and what your confidence is. I always say to new hunters, practicing the proper way to shoot is more important than getting immediate accuracy results. If you're drawing your bow back and you're holding your position and doing everything correctly, the way it should be done first, and then honing in your equipment after, then you'll have way more success because you'll create a habit. I always have a set routine. I do this and then I do that. Typically what I do is I square up to my target in the proper stance, or whether that's kneeling, but my upper body always remains the same. I draw back, not very quickly, but within a reasonable way to get it back into my full draw. And then from there, I make sure I have my elbow up and I have everything set, and I have my anchor points, like I have a kisser button that touches between where my lips are, and then my nose touches the string, and then I look down the peep sight, and then I find my target at the range that I know it's at, and then I take a breath, and then I release. It's something that if you do it over and over and over and over again, like anything else, it becomes a habit, and you don't even think about it when that's not what you're thinking about, and you're thinking about trying to take a shot at an animal. And always focusing on that spot, not the target. Focusing on a very minimal, small spot, and that's what you're trying to hit. I like to practice scenarios because that's real. I shoot from different positions. I shoot sitting down. I shoot sitting on a knee. I shoot going from behind a tree. I focus on that single shot. I never worry like, oh, that one was, if this one's not good, the next one will be good. Or, I usually get good by my third shot. The only one that matters is the first shot, honestly. And if you treat every shot like the first shot, then it's all that more important because, you'll feel confident every single time you take a shot. I hold my draw for longer positions. Things happen, animals move when you didn't think they were, or you have to make a draw before the animal steps in and then they wait, and because they're cautious. But if you can practice holding your draw for longer periods of time and focusing on your shot and making good shots, you're going to have that much more confidence in yourself when you're out there shooting and hunting. I always like to practice drawing slowly and letting off slowly. Again, sometimes you have to make very slow movements in the woods when you have animals close. This is a game of inches and yards, and if you spook an animal, you could blow your chance. So I always try to make sure I draw slowly so I don't spook the animals, and I practice that. I practice that scenario. And then sometimes you have to let go. You get so tired, you've been sitting there holding it, you have to let go. So if you can practice letting off slowly, then you can also get a better, you can get more opportunities out of that. And then tuning your equipment, ensuring the entire setup is working correctly. Always making sure if something's off, something breaks, something's not right, that you're adjusting that, taking it to a bow shop, taking it to somebody who knows bows, making sure that, your fletchings are not coming off, that your nocks are good, that your everything is working right, your arrows aren't cracked. You could really hurt yourself if that happens. And then once you start getting good at practicing at a short distance, you can start adjusting your sights for farther distances as the arrow drops a little bit. You will have to change your aiming point. I need to make sure my laptop is plugged in. Sorry. Alrighty, that was close. Sorry about that. So after practicing and while you're practicing, we did a preseason e-scouting scenario, and in these webinars, and scouting is something that is a bow hunter's best friend. Scouting is huge. Scouting is everything to me when it comes to bow hunting and being a successful bow hunter. I spend hours and hours and hours of time making sure I have my spots and I have different avenues and understanding where the animals are and where they're not at certain times of the year. So I'll get into that. Time of the year. So you're going to be hunting in a different time of year than possibly in gun season. So deer and animals are going to act differently. It also falls in the beginning or the heat of a breeding season. Up in New York, the heat of the breeding season was near the tail end of archery season. So when you hit the rut, it's archery season. It's not gun season. You might get a little bit of the rut action in gun season, but that was another reason why I liked bow hunting so much, was most of that rut activity was going on during bow season. So animals act very different during pre-rut and during the rut and post-rut. So warmer temperatures and longer days, you get to hunt longer, you get to hunt earlier. So you have to take into account what the animals are doing. They're less pressured really at the beginning of the season when they're on their summer patterns, as you can see from that top right picture of these deer frolicking in a trail cam picture that I took on public land. they're out there in the middle of the day. You don't see that many times of the year, but you know, that's in August, as you can see, right before, you know, half a month to a month before archery season here in North Carolina. So, and then you can also see in the bottom right in Colorado, there's some deer out there in the summertime, or some elk out there in the summertime, just right out in plain sight. So these animals act different at different times of the year. So sometimes what you see on trail camera, even in the early season, might not be what you see during bow season, but understanding what these animals are doing at this time of the year is so important when you're thinking about where you want to hunt. One of the reasons why is food is different. Food is different during different times of the year. When the acorns drop, you know, it can happen in October, depending on where you are in the state or even country. The acorns drop at different times of the year, and that's one of the deer's favorite, you know, foraging foods. They'll leave acorns. They'll leave corn for acorns. It's just high in calories, and it's really important for them to get that food, and it's one of their favorite forms. So, and that's just one scenario. There's crops, and there's different kinds of food that they go after. There's different kinds of foliage. So adapting to what time of the year you're hunting is super important. And I always am trying to make a point to figure out where these food sources are during the bow season that I can key in on, especially early season. They're going to possibly be more in those foraging mindset, getting ready for the winter and getting ready for the rut. So you can ambush deer more on food, especially during the bow season, during daylight hours. Animal behavior, which I kind of touched on, which is, you know, rutting and sexual activity, is in the beginning or the peak during this time, and understanding the trails and the tendencies of animals during these early seasons. So they'll take trails in the early season that they won't take later in the season. So understanding that and trying to predict that, you know, you can try to predict, but just trying to put puzzle pieces together is super important. And then with a long season like North Carolina has, starting in September and going all the way into, you know, November, depending on where you are in the state, you know, the deer change quite drastically through that time. You know, what bedding areas they might use, what food they're going after, what part of the property that they're using. I always, you know, it's pretty known that decreased pressure, because there's not as many folks out there. You know, there's more gun hunters than there are bow hunters or archery hunters. But I still see a lot of archery hunters, don't get me wrong, especially on public land. But there are less people out there, and the animals feel a little more comfortable. So you can see some more animals, but at the same time, they might be out during more daylight hours than they would maybe go nocturnal later in the season when they feel the pressure. And then, like I said, I always key on heavily used deer trails that are early in the season. Now, again, that changes, and animals change, and you'll see an animal on trail cam all the way up till the beginning of bow season, then he just knows and he's gone. That happens to me too many times, but you start to learn, you know, kind of what the animals do and how they adjust the more you're out there. So I always like to key on early deer trails, and then, you know, you have your rutting activity, and then obviously once you get in the gun, you have your post-rut. Scouting and preparation. Now, you've done your scouting, and you kind of have an idea of the deer trails and everything that's going on, and you're just making assumptions and making guesses, and that's all great. But while you're out there in scouting, what you really need to do is start thinking about, as a bow hunter, you can't take 100-yard shots. You got to be taking, you know, 30-yard shots. So setting up close to deer trails is kind of an art, but where the art comes in is that preparation aspect. And when you're selecting ambushes, you have to really, really take a hyper focus on wind direction and prevailing winds. So understanding the way the wind blows in a certain part of the property off of a deer trail is so important, especially when you're considering getting in and out, and making sure when you're trying to ambush a deer that the wind's not blowing right in his face, because, you know, I believe in scent control, but to an extent, the animals will smell you. They will if they're close enough. And if you have done everything right and you're on a nice deer trail that has a lot of activity, and you make the mistake of putting your stand or your blind or your ambush spot on the wrong wind, there you go. You know, there goes your opportunity on that animal. And I've had many animals, you know, bust me while bow hunting, probably more than any other form of hunting. And I always consider your approach and cutting trails to get into your spot. If there is a deer trail you have to walk to get to your spot, get creative. get some clippers out this you know, late summer or even the middle of the summer when the green is really green, and go out there and cut yourself your own little trail that goes to your stand desired location or your blind location, so you can get in a way that, you know, typically you wouldn't get in, so that way you can have the wind in your favor, but based on the way the wind travels there. Prevailing wind is important to look on weather, but wind, you have to think of it like water in a creek or a river or something. It flows differently, just slightly, you know, so don't always hold true just the weather. Get out there, find those spots, use a wind detector, you know, the little talcum powders that you can blow and kind of determine, okay, the wind says it should be blowing north, but it blows more, you know, northwest to west in this spot. It just might be the way the wind hits it, might be the way it comes off of some water, like a lake, which we have a lot in the Triangle area here in Raleigh, but just understanding the wind is super important when it comes to bow hunting and setting up your spots. I always have multiple spots. I mean, I have probably too many spots. I have so many spots I'll never be able to hunt them all in one season, but I always keep, you know, my core spots, and then I have other spots for different times of the year. You know, I don't like to hunt stand over and over and over again because they get sensitive to that pressure. You might not see the deer during that day, and you might think, oh, tomorrow's the day, but that deer might walk by your area at night, and enough times of doing that, they register that there's a human scent there. So I like to minimize my impact on an area, so that way I can have higher results later, and one way to do that is just having multiple spots. Preseason preparation. So hanging stands, cutting lanes, you know, prepping blinds, all that stuff, you know, I've done it in the middle of a season when I have to make a quick audible, but for the most part, in my opinion, it should be done well before the season. Month or two before the season, you should, you know, either have hung a stand or have it ready to hang a stand. I know public land, you have to take it down and take it up, but if you prep it now, you're going to make so much less disturbance later. And what you can do is a lot of those animals adapt, like blinds. You know, deers will walk by a blind, but only if it's been there for a while. You know, you put a new pop-up blind out, they're going to be very cautious with that blind. It's something new to them. They live there. You know, so you kind of got to let them get used to it without any human scent on it, and then they can, you know, feel comfortable again. Hunting styles. So I talked a little bit about tree stands, and ambushing is one of the probably the main tactics of a bow hunter, whether that be in a blind, on the ground, or in a tree stand. And as you can see from the video, that's kind of a view from a tree stand. One of the advantages of being high in the air in a tree stand is that you're above the deer's vision. So he can't catch your movement as easily when you're higher up. You get a better vantage point and you can see farther away. You can get ready before the animals come. And that is why most people hunt in a deer stand or a tree stand, whether you're gun hunting or you're bow hunting. And it's one of the best ways to do it, especially out here in the East. When there's a lot of hardwoods or trees that you can get up into. Now, some of the ones that are elevated platforms are lock-ons, ladders, and climber stands, and they're all great options. One of the new emerging ones is a harness hunter. As you can see Andy in the top right corner using kind of a harness / rock climbing setup to hunt deer with his little hang loose sign. And then I'm actually doing in that video, I'm actually doing the same type of thing. And if you're interested in harness hunting, I'd look into it. There's one of the most versatile ways to hunt, and you know, it can do some things that the other ones can't, and you can carry less gear in. But if not, the traditional lock-on ladders and climber stands are great ways to hunt for bow hunting. And then ground blinds. So you can get the manufactured ground blinds at any of your local stores. You can build your own, like that bottom right, or find some natural occurring ones, like a fallen down tree or bush or whatever. I've done both of those. I've created my own, and they're great ways to get in and out of a spot without having to climb up a tree, especially if you need quick access to somewhere and you don't want to do a lot of setup. But again, I think pre-preparation is huge, knowing what trees you want to go into so you're not rummaging around and making a whole bunch of disturbance is one of the best ways to ambush. And then there's the spot and stalk, which is traditionally more of an out west kind of thing, and it can be done here. I've had close encounters doing this, or still hunting is another version of spot and stalk, especially here in the east, which is basically just really slowly, like taking a half hour to go like 100 yards, and letting animals go by you. I've taken animals doing this, and I've had success doing it. And then there's also the glassing and stalking, which is something that maybe you'd see out west for like mule deer or elk, where you're in these big open plains or open patches. You see an animal and you create your stalk to them so you can get an opportunity. These are all extremely effective ways, and people get deer every year doing this, and it's something that you should consider in your arsenal, whether you're going to your stand or you just checking out a completely new area during deer season and you just want your opportunities to be magnified. And then there's calling and setting up with a partner. So this can be done with deer, and just like it can be done with any other big game species, and that is, somebody using a rattling horns behind you, 60 yards during the peak of the rut, and you're set up farther in front, anticipating that a deer will come out of some bedding area, coming and looking for this fight. And it's one of the ways that people have a lot of success hunting animals with bows. It's one of the favorite ways that Texas hunters like to do it, because rattling is such a good way to bring in those Texas bucks, and it can be done here as well, or across any part of the country, and I know people do it all the time. So I haven't done it as much with deer, but I can tell you that I've done calling during the rut, and I've had deer come in, whether I be grunting or rattling, and it's one of the good ways to bring a deer to you. It's kind of like a mimicking, or it's a little bit like turkey season where you're calling the animal to you. Still, wind is always king in this scenario, because they'll try and circle around you to get to the wind. So if you can position the shooter in a position that you think the animal would go to get that wind to the caller, you can pull off some pretty cool hunts doing this. And it's a great way to hunt with somebody else. And then where to find more help. Local bow shops are probably one of the most sound places to find expertise on equipment, how to set up your bow. Like, this is their job. It's like going to a mechanic. They are going to make sure it's right. That is their job. That's what they do. That is their profession. So I always encourage people to check out bow shops. Ranges, they have classes, they have all kinds of stuff for somebody who's new into bow hunting and need help and are willing to pay for some help. And then they have awesome intel on equipment that works and will fit your needs. They do this every day, and they know the new stuff coming in and the old stuff that used to be in, and people who are using stuff for a long time. It's like I said, it's like a mechanic. They know the ins and outs of it. And then local shooting clubs, organizations, and friends. I mean, you can only spend so much money at a bow shop, so you find organizations like the North Carolina Bow Hunters Association or other groups that have formed, like 3D shooting groups, and these are people that are really passionate about bow hunting, and that's what they really like to do with their free time, and they're going to give you sage advice, and they're going to tell you about products that stink and not try to sell you anything, or they're going to tell you about stuff that's really awesome and it's worth the money. Different tactics that they use to hunt with, and it's really just a great way to meet other people who bow hunt and genuinely really enjoy the sport and want to see you succeed. So I would suggest any one of those. You can always reach out to us at Opportunity Outdoors. There's some great mentors in New Hill that are also bow hunters. So, and if you find any friends that are into it as well, definitely get their input and advice and go shooting with them. And then some final thoughts on archery hunting is asking questions is key. Whether that's a bow shop, your local mentor, you're just somebody that you come across that's a bow nut. And this way you can make the right decisions that fit you. Going on Reddit or going on different like archery talk forums are great ways to get people's input on a bow you're looking at, or arrows you're looking at, or setups you want to do. It's great, and that's what I think is most important. And practicing a lot. The more you practice, you grow your confidence, and confidence is key in your equipment and yourself. When you're confident in both those things, the moment of truth is much more focused on that actual moment rather than worrying about your ability or your equipment's ability. Always maintain your equipment. Keep it fine-tuned. Don't ignore things. Don't let them get to a point where they're falling apart with you out in the woods. You know, it ruins a hunt. It ruins your time. I'm super, super, you know, vigilant on making sure all my equipment is set before a hunt. If I have to, I'll spend a little extra money to make sure everything's okay. I'll get it tuned. And when I talk about tuning, we can get into more of that during the question period, but one way of tuning is paper tuning, which is shooting into a piece of paper and making sure all you're seeing is the hole of the arrow and your 3 fletchings. If you see anything else with rips, then that means your arrow's not flying correctly. And that's one way to tell, oh, my bow needs to be tuned. And that could be changing the rest, changing the knock point. And there's a lot of resources out there to help you do it yourself, but other people who have done it might be quicker at helping you out. And then, of course, making sure your sights are fixed, making sure your release is working correctly, making sure, you know, if you need a new string and it's really frayed, that'll throw off your tune. And it can get dangerous at some points if you let it go too long, but that's rare. But still, you should maintain that. Same with your arrows, making sure they're not cracked or they're broken. And then adapt your setups and conditions. You know, so if you're hunting one way, and this is your first year bow hunting, but the deer do something different, adapt, make your changes. And then I always say it's the ultimate game of cat and mouse because you have to get so close. And it's really one of the ways, it's one of the reasons why I find it so much fun, because you get to see deer so close for the most part. And you do during gun as well, but you always have to get that close during bow. And it's really, really cool to see the way the animals react, but it's really hard to get it right, you know, when it comes to wind, comes to setups, etc. And be persistent. Don't give up. I mean, everything can happen so fast in bow hunting. It's always like I feel like I blacked out whenever something happens because you're just so focused on the moment. And when those moments happens, you realize how much fun hunting is in general. But, you know, I always think there's a little bit heightened pressure when it comes to bow hunting, but it also can have a heightened reward. And enjoy the experience is kind of what I was saying. There are many things that you will see in archery season that you won't witness during gun season, and vice versa. But that's why I like hunting both seasons. You get a different taste of the woods, but really enjoy bow hunting. It's really hard, but if you can enjoy those moments, it's super rewarding because you get to see so many things. Like I said, you know, animals aren't hunkering down during colder weather, and it's just really unique. So always try and enjoy every experience, and bow hunting is no exception. And then here's some blood pumping action for you. This is me archery elk hunting, and I know the video is a little grainy, but you can't hunt usually typically elk like this where they're screaming during a gun season. So this is just some of the experiences that I like to share. And every single time I watch these videos, it brings me back to that blood pumping moment. I never ended up getting this animal, but it got close. Alrighty, well, that's all I have, and more on Opportunity Outdoors is you can find us at www.opportunityoutdoors.com. You can email us at connectedopportunityoutdoors.com, and on there's Andy's cell phone, who fields a lot of the calls and texts, but I'll always provide my email as well. If you send us an email, I get it through Connect. And you can also email us at evan@connectopportunityoutdoors.com and Andy. We'd love for you to join us. Keep an eye out. We have some more archery stuff coming up. We'd really like to do some more field days, and we plan to, for people to get interested in archery hunting, and then also many things beyond that. We're always looking to grow the community. We're growing our mentorship, and we're always looking to grow the pool of people who are interested in joining us. We're not a guide service, but we are those who are willing to help people get out more. And if archery is something that's interesting to you, it's one of my biggest passions, and I love bringing people into the fold when it comes to archery hunting, and I know Andy does too. So feel free to reach out to us, and I guess I'll move it to questions.
All right, thanks, Evan. That was awesome. And like Evan said, there are no wrong questions. So if anybody wants to raise their hands real quick, I don't see anything in the chat box, but any questions? All right, well, you, Evan is a great mentor from personal experience, so thank you for adding that. And here we have a question. Are the differences in arrow ballistics as stark as the difference between different bullets?
Yeah, they can be. So like if you have a really something that's not properly to your length, or you have the improper spine, and even different arrows have different spines per different, makers and manufacturers for arrows. Yeah, it can be very different. So that's why, I always, and I've learned this as I've become a better bow hunter, is I've seen the difference. Like you shoot a mixed bag of arrows, even if they say the same spine, but they're from different manufacturers, it could be different because their spine chart could be different. But if you find the correct spine chart, you may be able to shoot the same arrow pretty similarly, but it might not be as stark as, something that's identical to something else. But I think that's the difference in bows, is there's so much variation between different bows and setups and different arrows, in the way that they flex. And, some guys change from 3 fletchings, and I think there's even like, I want to say there's even like 4 fletchings coming out, and different styles of fletchings, whether it's the longer traditional ones, there's the flu fletchings, which guys use on like trad, traditional, and now that there's the shorter ones. And yeah, it can get pretty different, even though it seems like the same arrow. But as long as you're consistently shooting the same arrow and it fits your stuff, it should work out pretty well for you.
All right, great. Any other questions? All right, well, I will go ahead and we'll go through the last couple slides and we will wrap up.
Great.
All right, so special thanks to the New Hill Education and Mentoring Program and all the facilitating partners. Please watch for a post-webinar email with a link for all materials related to this evening's webinar and a registration link for our next webinar in the series. May 25th webinar will be on the effective use of tree stands, and our speaker will be Pat O'Donnell from the New Hill Education and Mentoring Program. If you have further questions or would like more information on outdoor opportunities, please contact the New Hill Education and Mentoring Program at the link or Facebook page provided. Also, check out ncwf.org to learn more about the Wildlife Federation and to join a local chapter. And I just want to say thank you so much to Evan for this evening's presentation, and make sure that you guys all stop by and check out Opportunity Outdoors. So that's all for this evening, and we'll call it a night unless you have any last thoughts, Evan.
No, I guess, I appreciate you guys, the North Carolina Wildlife Federation, you, Liz, for putting this on. It's and obviously New Hill for organizing all this. And I've been with New Hill now for, I guess this is the 2nd year now, or maybe 3rd. I don't know. It's starting to blend together now, but it's always been top notch. And I'm excited that we have these webinars and people can learn from their homes. But getting out there is super important, and any way that you can get out there is awesome. And bow hunting is a great way to do it. And most people who get into bow hunting seem to really enjoy it. So I encourage anybody to reach out to me or anybody else that's into bow hunting, because it's yeah, I don't know. I lost for words at times because I just enjoy it so much. But thank you again.
All right, fantastic. And thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.